What comes to your mind when you think about Canada?
Maple syrup, hockey, and politeness.
Turns out there's a lot more quirky things that make Canada's history, culture, and geography pretty unusual.
So today we're gonna share 10 mind-blowing things about this country.
When I saw some of this, I was like, wait, what? And let's play a game. Keep a count of how many things you didn't know and let us know in the comments below. And if you didn't know at least 5 out of 10, this video deserves a like.
Buckle up and let's go!
When we think about Canada, we imagine mountains, snowy prairies, and vast forests. The last thing most of us think of is sandy beaches, sea waves, and marinas full of yachts. But wait, spanning over 240,000 kilometers, Canada has the longest coastline in the world. This coastline stretches longer than any other country on Earth. To put that into perspective, if you take this line and wrap it around our planet, it will wrap around a whopping 6 times. A mare usque ad mare is the official motto of Canada. It translates to "from sea to sea." It spans from the rugged Pacific Ocean in the west through the icy Arctic waters up north to the vibrant Atlantic shores in the east, embodying the boundless spirit of this remarkable land. Not everyone is into surfing Arctic waves. After all, it's so cold up there that even maple syrup starts to freeze. That's why only 15% of Canadians live near the coast. Of these, over 3.2 million people reside on the Pacific coast and over 2.2 million are on the Atlantic coast. But while some Canadians stick to the edges of the country, others dig deep, literally.
Deep under the Lake Huron in Ontario lies the largest underground salt mine in the world, the Goderich mine. This thing is so massive that it's about the same size as the town of Goderich, covering a surface area of 7 square kilometers beneath the Lake Huron. The tunnels go as deep as 550 meters below the lake. This is enough to fit the Toronto CN Tower in there. Opened in 1959, the mine is still operational, producing rock salt, which ends up all around North America. It helps all of us stay safe on the snowy and icy roads. Since the mine is operational, taking tours below the surface is sadly not an option. But how cool would it be to check it out? You can learn more about the mine at the Huron County Museum or experience the mine virtually.
Now let's zoom out. Have you ever wondered how time zones became a thing? You can thank Canada for this. Back in 1876, Sir Sandford Fleming, a Scottish-born Canadian engineer, found himself stranded overnight at a railway station after a mix-up over train departure times. He got really frustrated, but also inspired, so he came up with an idea of the global system of time zones that we use today. So the next time you miss a train, remember, you can turn waiting time into a world-changing idea. This idea divided the world into 24 time zones, labeled A to Y, skipping J. Each letter covered 15 degrees of longitude. All clocks within each zone would be set to the same time as the others, but differed by 1 hour from those in the neighboring zones. While Fleming's exact system wasn't universally adopted, it laid the foundation for the time zone structure countries use today. In Canada, time zones run with 1 hour offset, but Newfoundland and Southern Labrador decided to adopt a different approach. Their time zone has a 30-minute offset from UTC in the Americas. Why is that? Well, in the late 19th century, Newfoundlanders chose their 30-minute offset because that was close to the local solar time in St. John's. That's the city where most Newfoundlanders lived. If you ever missed a Zoom call due to time zones mix-up, you can thank Canada. To make up for that, Canadians supply the world with the golden goodness, maple syrup.
Speaking of which, Canadians are proud of their maple syrup. They love it so much that they're ready to serve time for it. In 2012, Canada had the Great Canadian Maple Syrup Heist. The story became so famous that there's even a Wikipedia page dedicated to it. Thieves stole over 3,000 tons of maple syrup from a Quebec storage facility. That's nearly $19 million. That's an equivalent to about 24 million Canadian dollars today. The theft was actually accidentally discovered during an annual inventory check of syrup barrels in 2012. The inspector started climbing up the barrels and nearly fell, expecting to step firmly on the sturdy 600-pound barrels. But they were wobbly. It was an insider job, and police ended up arresting 17 men related to the theft. If you're curious to learn how they did it, the theft was featured in the Netflix docu-series Dirty Money. In 2018, Season 1, Episode 5, called The Maple Syrup Heist. On December 6, 2024, Amazon released the dark comedy TV series The Sticky, inspired by the heist, and it's rated 81% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty good. While it's not the largest heist in monetary terms, the maple syrup heist is big for the sheer volume of product stolen and the impact that it had on the key Canadian maple syrup industry. Adjusted for inflation, it remains the most valuable theft in Canadian history, with the recent Pearson Airport gold heist following up right next, where 20 million of Canadian dollars were stolen. And yes, Canadians were deeply offended by this crime. This wasn't just syrup, it was national pride.
Another subject of Canadian pride is the fact that Canada is one of the world's top exporters of clean energy. For starters, hydroelectricity is the largest renewable energy source in Canada, accounting for approximately 60% of all electricity Canada generates. Other renewable energy sources, such as biomass, wind, tidal, and solar, bring this number to 63%. Add nuclear energy to this, and we end up with over 77% of Canada's electricity generated without emitting greenhouse gases. Canada not only powers itself with clean energy, but also exports large quantities of electricity to the United States, helping reduce carbon emissions across borders. For instance, 15% of electricity used in the state of New York comes from Quebec. Think of it as Canada's way of lending a hand, or, a kilowatt. The energy sector is a major driver of Canada's economy, contributing billions annually while staying ahead of the curve in sustainability. But you already knew that. What you may not know is that Canada's growing its investment into wind, solar, and nuclear energy, making this country so attractive that even the Americans want a piece of it.
You're fired.
Even though we are known for our cold weather, when it comes to energy, we're pretty hot. Let's go over to the magical islands of Nova Scotia next, the Sable Island to be more exact.
Situated 300 kilometers southeast of Halifax, this remote stretch was once dubbed the Graveyard of the Atlantic, with nearly 400 shipwrecks around it. But the most fascinating thing about it is that it's home to about 500 wild horses. The first horses were released on the Sable Island in the late 1700s by settlers from Boston, though legend has it, some may have been borrowed from unsuspecting fishermen. Later, additional horses were brought in to improve the herd's breeding stock. Originally intended for private use and slaughter, this exploitation pushed the horses to the brink of extinction by the 1950s. And that turned their story into one of survival against the odds. So in 1960s, the Canadian government decided to protect the horses by law in their feral state. As a result, the herd had developed a unique genetic composition that brought the attention of conservationists. The Sable Island horses have become such a distinct feature of the region that they were designated an official symbol of Nova Scotia in 2008. And a few years later, in 2011, this place was declared as the Sable Island National Park Reserve.
If you're like me and you love horses, you can visit the island in January and February and from June to October. Just make sure you have Parks Canada permission in advance. The island is accessible by air or by sea, and only day visits are permitted. Just remember to leave no trace and don't feed the wild horses. From the windswept shores of Nova Scotia, let's head inland and discover another Canadian treasure, its lakes. With 60% of world's lakes, more than 2 million of them, Canada has more lakes than the rest of the world combined. While many places in the world declare freshwater access emergencies, Canada contains more than half of the world's freshwater reserves. Let it sink in. Canada has so many lakes that if you only measure actual land area and exclude the lakes area, Canada is no longer the second largest country in the world, not even the third. It will drop behind the US. Some lakes in Canada are so big they feel like a sea. 40 million residents of the United States and Canada depend on the fresh drinking water supplied by the Great Lakes water system. Canada's lakes power is not to be taken lightly. While oceans often steal the spotlight for their global importance, lakes are just as vital for the global and local ecology. They shape weather patterns, support ecosystems, and even impact climate. The lakes play a massive role in Canada's ecology, acting as a crucial player in the water cycle that sustains life across the entire country. They're not just scenic, they're essential. And as essential as they are, we haven't even fully studied them yet. Up until today, scientists haven't been able to see too far below the surface of the lakes. In fact, scientists have only accurately catalogued about 100 lakes so far. The Great Lakes hold water from glaciers that melted 20,000 years ago. It's mind-boggling to think about what secrets or discoveries might be hidden down there. Ancient ecosystems, unknown species, or maybe a monster or two. Who knows? Canada's lakes are keeping their secrets, for now.
Here's another force with some secret funky moves. Did you know that Canada's magnetic North Pole is always on the move? So let's start from the beginning. Imagine you're standing at the North Magnetic Pole. It's a rather special spot on Earth. All the planet's invisible magnetic field lines dive straight down into the ground. If a compass needle could move in all directions, it would point straight down there. What's even more mind-blowing is, no matter which direction you step in the North Pole, it will technically be south everywhere. There's no north left to go since you're already at the northernmost point. So that absolute north point is not fixed. It's constantly shifting due to changes in Earth's magnetic field. And guess what? It's been moving away from Canada, towards Siberia at an alarming rate. This is where we wanted to insert a joke, somewhere along the lines of,
"See, even the North Pole is leaving Canada."
But we thought to ask you to come up with a funny line on this. Let us know in the comments below. During the 20th century, the North Magnetic Pole went on quite a journey, drifting nearly 1,000 kilometers. But since the 1970s, it's really picked up the pace, zooming from a leisurely 9 kilometers per year to a rapid 52 kilometers. Back in 2007, members of the expedition to locate the magnetic North Pole wrote that such expeditions have become logistically difficult because the North Pole moves farther away from inhabited locations. They expect that in the future, the magnetic pole position will be obtained from satellite data instead of ground surveys. The magnetic field movements is not a new thing. Over the life of Earth, the orientation of the Earth's magnetic field has reversed many times. And that's an event known as a geomagnetic reversal. In the modern world, such an event could disrupt communication systems and power grids. Animals who rely on magnetic fields for orientation, like birds, whales, and other migratory animals, could encounter problems too. But no need to panic. There is no evidence of mass extinctions from geomagnetic reversals in the past. At least for now.
While Earth's magnetic field can divide and confuse, let me tell you about a place that brings people together despite the division. The Haskell Free Library and Opera House stands at the border between Stansted, Quebec and Derby Line, Vermont. Built in 1904, it was intentionally placed on the border as a symbol of unity. It's a library that belongs to two countries. The library's reading room is in Canada, but its front door is in the US. It also has the Opera House. The stage is in Canada, but the audience sits in the US. The library was built by the philanthropist family with the name Haskell. It was meant as a gift for people on both sides of the border and as a symbol of friendship. Inside, you will see a black line running through the floor to mark the international boundary. So technically, you could grab a book in Canada, then sit down and read it in the US without even going through customs. Today, the Haskell Free Library is one of the only places in the world where you can casually hang out in two countries at once. And honestly, it's the most Canadian thing ever, a place to bring people together no matter where they're from.
So how's it going so far? How many new interesting facts did you learn? Here's one more quirky piece of Canadian history for you. Canada is home to the world's smallest jail. Как это произносится?
Ye-old.
Ye-old jail, located in Rodney, Ontario, measures just 25 square meters. That's about the size of a single car garage. The building still has its original steel cell doors, stove, and a yellow brick exterior. Built in 1890, this tiny jail was less of a prison and more of a cooling-off station for rowdy locals and passing travelers. With just 2 cramped cells, it was never meant for long-term stays. Think of it as the 19th century version of a timeout corner for adults. Today, the Rodney jail hasn't held prisoners in decades. Instead, it's become a charming tourist attraction. Locals even celebrate it as part of the town's unique heritage. When I was moving to Canada, some people kept stressing how boring it was. But the more I learn about this country, the more fascinated I get. From underwater salt mines and the island of wild horses to the library built on the border and green energy obsession, Canada is nothing but boring, if you take the time to know it. Which of the facts surprised you the most? How many facts in this list did you already know about? Drop a comment below to let us know. And don't forget to hit the like button if you learned something new today. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already not to miss our future videos, and check out this video about the strangest border between 2 countries. And we'll see you there. Take care.